Welcome to your Food Safety and Catering Level 2, Section 1, Legislation around Food Safety. Let's take a look at the contents. Our Food Safety and Catering Level 2 online course provides theoretical and case study based training for anyone that handles food and requires thorough and professional training in food safety. By the end of this course, you will feel confident in applying the food safety regulations to your daily working practice. The sections we will cover are Section 1, Legislation around Food Safety, Section 2, Premises, Equipment and Cleaning, Section 3, Personal Hygiene, Section 4, Contamination and Food Safety Control, Section 5, Cleaning and Temperature Management Systems, Section 6, Food Poisoning, Hazards and Bacteriology, Section 7, the Control of Organisms, otherwise known as Pests, and Section 8, Safe Storage and Transportation of Foods. In this first unit, we are looking at food safety, why it is important. All food handlers have a responsibility and a legal duty to ensure that no harm is caused to anyone. Anyone who handles food may be prosecuted if found responsible for a breach of the law. Those who breach the law could face prosecution, unlimited fines and a prison sentence. Food safety is important for many of the following reasons: complaints from unhappy customers, loss of substantial money due to food wastage and possible legal actions and fines, damaging and long-lasting poor reputation of the business, causing illness and possible death from food poisoning, outbreak of pests, and ultimately closure of the business. Welcome to your Food Safety and Catering Level 2, Section 1, Legislation around Food Safety. Let's take a look at the contents. In this first section, we are looking at the legislation around food safety. We will cover the following units. Unit 1, Food Safety, why is it important? Unit 2, Responsibilities of a food handler. Unit 3, the Food Safety Act 1990. Unit 4, European Law Regulation EC number 852/2004. Unit 5, Food Safety and Hygiene Regulations 2013 and the Food Law 2017. Unit 6, Due Diligence. Unit 7, Food Standards Agency and Food Hygiene Rating, and Unit 8, Training. Please remember, to move to the next unit you must press save and continue. To go over and watch the video again, press play. You can take the test as many times as you need to in order to pass the test. In this second unit, we will look at the responsibilities of a food handler. As a food handler, you must ensure you are wearing clean and appropriate clothing at all times. You must ensure your personal hygiene levels are exemplary at all times. You must immediately report any symptoms or illnesses to your supervisor so that necessary action can be taken. You must ensure that the guidelines of the kitchen are followed to protect foods from contamination. It is important that a food handler understands the terms food safety and food safety hazards in the preparation and serving of food. In the preparation of food, no matter what role you have, food safety rules must be followed to avoid contamination or cross-contamination. If you do not follow food safety rules, you risk people becoming ill and requiring medical attention, which can be costly to the business. In this third unit, we are looking at the Food Safety Act 1990. Businesses are required to follow certain laws. One of these is the Food Safety Act 1990, which was devised in Great Britain. The framework is for all types of food businesses in Britain. Similar laws apply in Northern Ireland. The law states that you must not produce and supply food that could be detrimental to a person's health, sell foods that are not fit for human consumption, provide foods that do not meet the required high standards to the customer, or incorrectly label or describe food. You can find out more information on www.legislation.gov.uk. In this fourth unit, we are looking at the European Law Regulation EC 852/2004. This law was devised in 2004, and all food businesses in European Union countries are required to follow the regulation EC 852/2004 of the European Parliament. The regulation is in place to ensure the control of the registration of all food businesses with their local council, any food safety management system, for example HACCP, which is Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Points, any premises that food is handled, the equipment the food handler uses, adhere to food safety regulations and ensure records are kept up to date, and last but not least, the training in place for food handlers. You can find out more information on the Food Standards Agency website, www.food.gov.uk. In this fifth unit, we are looking at the Food Safety and Hygiene Regulations 2013 and the Food Law Code of Practice England 2017. The Food Safety and Hygiene Regulations law is required to be followed by businesses in accordance with European regulations. The regulation builds upon the earlier Food Safety Act 1990 and ensures that it supersedes earlier food safety laws. The temperature of foods is controlled under UK law, and it enforces previous legalities and penalties in the event of prosecution. You can find out more information on www.legislation.gov.uk. Last but not least is the Food Law Code of Practice England 2017. It is the most current law which came into force on the 30th of March 2017. The law gives statutory guidance which local authorities must follow and implement the relevant provisions of the code when dealing with the enforcement of food laws. Changes to the code include providing additional guidance on the communication of food incidents and hazards and addressing food criminality, consistent interpretation and approach by local authority officers delivering official controls, and additional clarifying and competency requirements of local authority officers since the implementation of the previous code. Further information on enforcement and regulation can be found on the Food Standards Agency website, www.food.gov.uk. In this sixth unit, we will look at due diligence and what this means. Where legal action may be taken against a business, the only defence in a court of law under food safety is due diligence. This can be avoided if the following is taking place: keeping thorough and up-to-date records, personal hygiene is maintained for all, pest control is high prioritised, training for all staff, cleaning management systems are in place, recording of deliveries, and risk assessments are completed regularly. If prosecuted, fines issued by the Crown Court can be unlimited. Prison sentences can be limited to 6 months in a magistrate's court, however they can be up to 2 years in the Crown Court. Under the Food Safety Act 1990, the legal defence of due diligence clearly states that it is designed to balance the protection of the consumer against defective food with the right of traders not to be convicted of an offence where they have taken proper responsibility for their products. Where a person who is charged proves that they took all reasonable precautions and exercised all due diligence to avoid commission of the offence by himself or by a person under their control. Further information on due diligence can be found on the Food Standards Agency website, www.food.gov.uk. In this 8th unit, we're looking at the food hygiene rating schemes. The scheme that is used in England, Wales and Northern Ireland is known as the Food Hygiene Rating Scheme, FHRS. It is a 6-point scoring system, 0 to 5 being the highest. The scheme used in Scotland is known as the Food Hygiene Information Scheme, FHIS. It is a 2-point scoring system with pass or improvement required. It rates hygiene standards against legal requirements. A separate Eat Safe Award scheme recognises businesses that achieve standards over and above the legal requirements in Scotland. Environmental Health Officers, EHOs, and Trading Standards Officers, TSOs, are employed by the local authorities to enforce food safety laws. They have the authority to enter food establishments at any time to carry out food safety inspections, investigate complaints of outbreaks of potential food poisoning, make recommendations to ensure good food practice, and provide advice to food business owners. An environmental health officer may issue a hygiene improve notice. Failure to comply with the advice of improvements required by a set date is an offence. If they issue a hygiene emergency prohibition notice, it will mean that they will be unable to use all or part of the equipment being used with immediate effect. If they issue a hygiene emergency prohibition order, this means that the environmental health officer can order this notice by a court if the establishment needs to be closed permanently. So, to recap, please remember the Food Hygiene Rating Scheme operates in England, Northern Ireland and Wales. The Food Hygiene Information Scheme operates in Scotland. Remember, an environmental health officer can issue a hygiene improvement notice, a hygiene emergency prohibition notice, or finally a hygiene prohibition order if required. In this 8th unit, we are looking at training. It is essential that food handlers are given the necessary training so that they understand their responsibilities. Regular formal training should be undertaken and certified for each member of staff. It should be recorded by the employer or supervisor and reminders given to refresh their knowledge. If the food handler is the person dealing with the business's food safety system, then it is recommended for them to participate in training giving them knowledge in HACCP, which stands for Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Points. The 7 steps of HACCP that must be followed are: Step 1, conduct a hazard analysis, establish what could go wrong at every stage and necessary controls in place. Step 2, identifying critical control points, CCPs. This is where you recognise the most important points where things go wrong. Step 3, set critical limits for each CCP. This means to set a measurable limit that will determine the food safe from food that is potentially unsafe. Step 4 is to set up checks for each CCP. This means to monitor each CCP to prevent complications from arising. Step 5 is to take corrective action. This means you should decide what to do if something goes wrong. Step 6 is verification. This is to ensure that you are able to prove your HACCP plan is working correctly and relevant actions have been taken if needed. Last but not least, Step 7 is record keeping, ensuring that you maintain an accurate record of all the steps you have put into place and applied as necessary. The HACCP principles have been installed and developed into other food safety management systems. They have been designed to help small to medium-sized catering organisations and retailers to comply with current legislation. There is the Safer Food, Better Business Guide, which is used in England and Wales. There is the Cook Safe Guide for caterers that is used in Scotland. The Safe Catering Guide was developed and is used by the Food Standards Agency in Northern Ireland. This CPD recognised e-learning course provides the level of information you require for the Food Safety Level 2 certification. You must ensure it is updated within 3 years. Welcome to Section 2, Contents. In this second section, we are looking at premises, equipment and cleaning. We will cover the following units. Unit 1, Premises and Workflow. Unit 2, Colour coding of equipment. Unit 3, Cleaning products. Unit 4, Wet cleaning and disinfecting. Unit 5, the disposal of waste. Please remember, to move to the next unit you must press save and continue. To go over and watch the video again, press play. You can take the test as many times as you need to in order to pass the test. In this second section, first unit, we are looking at the premises and workflow. Regulations applies to all establishments including delivery vehicles, market vendors and any other mobile food transport. By law, food premises must be registered with their local authority within 28 days before opening. When designing a food establishment, the following must be considered. All floors must be non-slip. Surface materials must be durable, smooth, heat-resistant, non-absorbent and easy to clean. All worktops and equipment must be non-toxic, non-rusting and resistant to cracking and chipping. Walls and ceilings must be grease-resistant and have no cracks. All wood must be sealed and in good repair. All floor edges should prevent the infestation of pests and be easy cleaning. The food premises must ensure it has adequate lighting and ventilation. They must have flushable toilets and adequate hand washing facilities with hot and cold running water, with soap and drying facilities which are separate from food preparation sinks. Provide safe removal of rubbish to prevent infestation of pests. Ensure there is adequate protection on air vents, windows and doors. And finally, to reduce the risk of cross-contamination, workflow must be designed so that people do not double back and pass through clean food preparation areas. Section 2, Unit 2, Colour coding of equipment. Equipment. To prevent cross-contamination, the equipment used in food production must be easy to clean, made of suitable material and in good working order. It is ideal to help remind staff that equipment is colour-coded to keep the preparation of raw and cooked food separate and to use correct equipment in each area of their work. Large items of equipment should be well maintained, easily accessible and movable to allow for cleaning to prevent physical contamination. Although colour coding is not a legal requirement, it is certainly considered good practice. It is possible to purchase equipment in colour-coded form from most catering suppliers. If colour-coded products are to be used, the colour separation must be strictly adhered to. Below are suggestions for colour-coded equipment. Red for raw meat, yellow for cooked meat, blue for raw fish and seafood, white for dairy products and bakery, green for fruit and salad, and brown for vegetables. Section 2, Unit 3, Cleaning products. The objective of cleaning is to remove suitable conditions for the growth of bacteria, reduce bacteria to a safe level, prevent conditions that will attract pests, enable the production of clean, safe food, provide a safe, healthy working environment free from hazards, improve the overall image to customers, and comply with legal and moral obligations to keep food safe. It is considered good practice to clean as you go. This prevents a build-up of dirt and debris where bacteria can multiply. Cleaning chemicals. Always store chemicals away from food and food areas. Keep chemicals in proper labelled containers to make sure instructions and content are clear. Detergents. Detergents, for example, washing up liquid, will break down and remove grease and dirt. They will not kill bacteria. Sanitizers are a combined detergent and disinfectant which will clean and disinfect, providing that it is left on for the specified contact time. It's important that you must always follow the manufacturer's instructions. Disinfectants are used to reduce bacteria to a safe level. This can be achieved by using very hot water at 82 degrees or higher, steam and chemical disinfectants. They will reduce bacteria to a safe level if diluted correctly and are left on for the correct contact time before rinsing off and wiping off with paper towels. Disinfectants will not break down grease and dirt, therefore items should be washed before being disinfected. It is important to draw up and complete cleaning schedules, which we'll cover later on in cleaning management systems. Safe use of cleaning chemicals. Always work from the cleaner areas to the dirtier areas to prevent spreading dirt. Put food away or cover before cleaning. Follow the manufacturer's instructions and safety procedures at all times. If protective clothing is recommended, then it must be provided and worn. Never mix cleaning chemicals. Mixing chemicals may cause toxic fumes, explosions or burns. Let's take a look at the areas that require particular attention in food premises. They are contamination hazards such as cloths, mops, cleaning equipment and bins, which by their nature will be contaminated with bacteria. Food contact surfaces, any item or surface that will directly come into contact with food. And hand contact surfaces, any item that you will touch with your hands. These will collect dirt and bacteria that you may pass on to food. Section 2, Unit 4, Wet Cleaning and Disinfecting. Wet cleaning and disinfecting. It is important to protect or put food away before cleaning. Step 1, pre-clean. That's scrape plates, boards, pans, etc. Step 2, wash in hot water, wearing rubber gloves, with detergent or a sanitizer using a scourer or a cloth. Step 3, rinse, using clean, hot water to remove detergent and food particles. Step 4, disinfect, with a chemical disinfectant using the correct contact time. Step 5, final rinse with hot water. If using a sanitizer, then omit stages 3 and 4, but remember that the correct contact time is essential. Step 6, dry. Air dry or use disposable paper cloths. Tea towels will harbour bacteria, so they should be avoided if possible. If a tea towel is used, it must be clean, dry and changed after each session. So to recap, 1, pre-clean, 2, wash, 3, rinse, 4, disinfect, 5, final rinse and 6, dry. Always store cleaning chemicals and cleaning equipment away from food and food areas. Mops should be cleaned, disinfected and allowed to air dry after use. Cloths. To avoid the spread of bacteria, use disposable single-use cloths wherever practical. Hot wash, disinfect and air dry reusable cloths after each task. Wipe ready-to-eat food surfaces and equipment with single-use or clean disinfected cloths. Extra care should be taken in ready-to-eat food preparation areas, as this food is eaten without further cooking and therefore any bacteria on the food will be eaten. If you are not sure whether a cloth is clean or not, don't use it. Section 2, Unit 5, the disposal of waste. Rubbish disposal. It is important that waste is controlled and dealt with effectively. Waste and packaging will attract pests, provide conditions for bacterial growth and may contaminate clean food. External bins should ideally be fitted with a suitable lid, easy to clean and disinfect, pest-proof, collected regularly and located away from food delivery and food handling areas. Internal bins should ideally be situated to avoid contaminating clean food, fitted with a suitable lid, movable and allow thorough cleaning, lined with a bin liner, emptied regularly, kept away from doors and windows to avoid attracting flies and other pests, regularly cleaned and disinfected, including the areas around them, and foot pedal operated to reduce the risk of cross-contamination. Welcome to Section 3, Contents. In this third section, we are looking at personal hygiene. We will cover the following units. Unit 1, the washing of hands. Unit 2, protective clothing. Unit 3, must-dos versus should not, and foreign objects. Please remember, to move to the next unit, you must press save and continue. To go over and watch the video again, press play. You can take the test as many times as you need to in order to pass the test. In this third section, we are looking at personal hygiene. In this first unit, we will primarily look at the washing of hands. During this unit, we will look at hair, hands, and jewellery. Personal hygiene is extremely important, and as a food handler, it is paramount that you have an exceptionally high standard of personal hygiene to ensure prevention of contamination. Our human bodies carry a variety of bacteria both inside and on our skin, which can be harmful, causing potential food poisoning. The ideal environment for bacteria on the hands to develop is by having food, moisture, and a temperature of around 37 degrees Celsius, allowing a fast production alongside a higher risk of infection. You must ensure your hands are exceptionally clean at all times. Just think about how many items you pick up or touch throughout the day, or the people you come into contact with. If all those items have been contaminated with bacteria, just imagine how much could be passed on to food if you didn't wash your hands thoroughly. All food handlers should wash their hands before starting work or entering food preparation areas, after handling raw foods including meat, eggs and vegetables, after going to the toilet, after handling allergenic food, before handling any cooked foods, after touching your face, hair or blowing your nose, after handling rubbish or waste products, after cleaning or handling cleaning equipment, after handling chemicals, after smoking, and after any breaks. The best practice for hand washing includes only use a designated hand washing sink, wash your hands thoroughly using a comprehensive hand washing technique, use antibacterial soap and hot water, dry hands thoroughly using disposable paper towels. Do not use reusable towels. Let's take a closer look at an effective procedure for hand washing. First, wet your hands thoroughly and apply plenty of soap. Rub both palms together. Interlock fingers and rub each palm over the back of the other. Rub around each thumb. Circle each palm using your fingertips. And finally rinse with clean water. After rinsing with clean water, dry your hands using a disposable paper towel. Do not use reusable towels as they harbour bacteria. Use an elbow or paper towel to turn off the tap, ensuring you do not directly touch the tap. You will have clean, bacteria-free hands. Let's look at other practices of good personal hygiene. Nails must be kept clean, short and free from nail varnish. Temporary nails must not be worn as these could come off and physically contaminate the food. All open wounds such as cuts, spots and boils must be covered with a waterproof dressing, usually blue, making them easily identifiable during food preparation. This is to ensure no contamination of human bacteria. It is good practice to wear disposable gloves if you have any dressings on the hands to further reduce the risk of contamination to the food. Food handlers must wear head and beard coverings as necessary prior to additional protective clothing to avoid loose hair physically contaminating food. Jewellery should not be worn in the preparation of food as it could be harbouring dirt and bacteria which could contaminate the food. If it was to fall off into the food, it would also physically contaminate the food. The jewellery could also get caught in equipment, causing harm to the food handler. In this second unit, we will look at protective clothing. The protective clothing is designed to protect the food that is being handled from the food handler. The clothing must be exceptionally clean and completely cover all of the food handler's own clothes. The protective clothing may include some of the following: jackets and trousers, overalls and aprons, hairnets, hats, cuffs and gloves, and safe shoes or safety shoes. It is ideal for the protective clothing to be light in colour so that any risks of contamination can be quickly observed and dealt with. None of the protective clothing must be worn outside of the food establishments. In addition to, outside clothing must not be worn within the food preparation areas. Changing areas and lockers should ideally be provided to assist food handlers to comply with the regulations. It should also be noted that strong smelling scents, including deodorants, soaps, perfumes, aftershaves and hand creams should be avoided by food handlers as these can contaminate the food and can taint the flavour of food. In this third unit, we will look at the things food handlers must do versus the things food handlers should not do. We will also look at foreign objects. A food handler must keep their hair covered when preparing food. They must cover wounds and cuts with a waterproof dressing, preferably blue. Taste food with a clean spoon every time. Use disposable tissues and wash hands. And always report to a supervisor if feeling unwell, suffering with skin conditions and any symptoms of food poisoning. A food handler should not comb or touch their hair, smoke or spit, lick their fingers, touch or pick their nose, have painted or artificial nails, eat in food preparation areas, wear jewellery when handling food, and wear protective clothing outside or vice versa. Here are some examples of foreign objects that can make their way into our foods: rings, earrings, hair and dandruff, nails and plasters. We will look more closely at contamination in the next section. Welcome to Section 4, Contents. In this fourth section, we are looking at contamination and food safety control. We will cover the following units. Unit 1, Types of Contamination. Unit 2, Cross-contamination and Spoilage. Unit 3, Control Measures. Please remember, to move to the next unit, you must press Save and Continue. To go over and watch the video again, press Play. You can take the test as many times as you need to in order to pass the test. In this first unit, we are looking at types of contamination. Physical contamination. As we have already briefly observed in the previous section, foreign objects are physical contaminants that should not be found in food. Although many are not dangerous to the customer, they are considered highly unwelcome and distasteful. Here are some examples: cigarette ends and ash, insects and flies, hair, jewellery, plasters, artificial nails, nuts, bolts, screws, etc., and buttons and pins. Physical contamination is one of the most frequent causes for customer complaints, which is why it is vital to avoid such contamination. Chemical contamination. Chemical contamination is the presence of unwanted substances that make food unfit for consumption or use. Chemicals may find their way into food through a variety of processes, such as cleaning products not used and rinsed correctly, mercury from the sea getting into fish, pesticides used in pest control, and toxic lubricants used in food preparation machinery. Acute poisoning is known as accidental poisoning, and chronic exposure poisoning occurs slowly over a prolonged period of time. Open tin or iron metal cans should not be placed in the fridge, particularly acidic foods like tomatoes and citrus fruits, as it can allow the metal to oxidise and enter the food. Pesticides and lubricants can be toxic and must be handled with extreme care following manufacturer's instructions. Allergenic contamination. An allergy is a reaction the body has to a particular food or substance. Allergies are extremely common. They're thought to affect more than 1 in 4 people in the UK at some point in their lives. Most allergic reactions are mild, but occasionally a severe reaction called anaphylaxis or anaphylactic shock can occur. This is a medical emergency and needs urgent treatment. Allergic reactions generally happen quickly within a few minutes of exposure to an allergen. The symptoms of anaphylaxis may include feeling lightheaded or faint, breathing difficulties, anxiety, clammy skin, fast heartbeat, collapsing or losing consciousness. If you believe someone is suffering from an allergic reaction, you must contact 999 or 112 immediately for urgent assistance. By law, all food establishments and manufacturers must provide clear information regarding the 14 major food allergens on pre-packed and loose food. We will look at those allergens shortly. The majority of food allergy sufferers will know what foods they have to avoid. However, these are not always obvious on the labels, and even a minuscule amount of an allergen could cause an immediate reaction which could kill them. The law changed in December 2014 to state that all food labels must highlight, using bold or italic text, allergen information. It must be included within the ingredients listing and not elsewhere on the packaging. As you can see from the example from a tin of soup, the label clearly identifies the possible allergens in the ingredients. All food establishments, whether they are takeaway or eat-in, must either provide allergen information on a menu or display board to inform customers where they can find the information. If a person requires food allergens information, they need to speak to a member of staff for their allergen file before placing their order. Businesses are liable for prosecution if they fail to identify allergens in their food and/or claim they were unaware. There are 14 major allergens which need to be identified on all food packaging and loose food. They are celery, cereals containing gluten, crustaceans, eggs, fish, lupin, milk, mollusks, mustard, nuts, peanuts, sesame seeds, soya and sulfur dioxide. Celery may be found in soups, salads and stock cubes. Cereals known as wheat, barley, rye, oats, spelt, etc. may be found in cakes, pastries, pasta, bread and couscous. Crustaceans are lobsters, prawns, crabs, crayfish and scampi, often found in Thai curries due to the shrimp paste. Eggs are used partially or wholly in cakes, quiches, pastries, mayonnaise, pasta and food products glazed with egg. Fish is used partially or completely in dressings, stock cubes, fish sauce and relishes. Lupin seeds and flour can be found in some pastries, bread, pasta, pancakes and waffles. Milk can be found in yogurts, custard, cream, cheese, butter, milk powder and foods glazed with milk. Mollusks are mussels, squid, scallops, whelks and land snails, often found in fish stews and oyster sauce. Mustard is liquid mustard, mustard powder and seeds and can be found in curries, marinades, sauces, bread, soups and ketchup. Nuts are those that grow on trees such as almonds, Brazil nuts, hazelnuts, cashews, macadamias and pistachios. They can be found in biscuits, breads, marzipan, nut oils, sauces and curries. Peanuts can be found partially or completely in biscuits, curries, ground nut oil, peanut flour, desserts and sauces. Sesame seeds can be found in bread, hummus, sesame oil and tahini, which is sesame paste. Soya, often found in soya products such as soya flour, soya milk, bean curd, miso paste, desserts, ice cream, margarine and vegetarian food products. Sulfur dioxide is often found in dried fruit, soft drinks, pickles, meat products, wine and beer. Microbial contamination. Microbial contamination is the inclusion or growth of harmful microorganisms in an item used in food, making it unfit for consumption. It is the most common form of contamination. Contaminated food may not smell, taste or look any different to food that is not contaminated. However, spoilage bacteria can cause food to go off by changing the flavour, smell, taste, colour and texture. Viruses can enter our bodies through contaminated food or water and can multiply inside, causing various illnesses to the person. Unlike bacteria, it does not require food or moisture to survive. Our bodies are the correct environment for multiplication, which means that the person does not have to ingest high quantities for an illness to occur, as the damage is already done from the first instance. Other potential sources of contamination include food handlers keeping poor personal hygiene routines, raw vegetables and shellfish. Moulds and yeast can contaminate and grow on a wide variety of food. Whilst the majority of moulds are harmless, some can produce harmful poisons that make food unfit to be eaten. Many of us will have observed mould growing on food, changing the appearance and often the smell of the food. There are naturally poisonous foods such as green potatoes, raw red kidney beans and rhubarb leaves and other pulses that can cause illness. Majority of these happen within the home rather than in food establishments due to strict guidelines. Remember, it is a criminal offence to sell food that is unfit for human consumption. Bacteria is found everywhere: pests, dirt, dust, raw food, contaminated water and on human skin. Contamination can be physical, chemical, bacterial or naturally occurring. Whether it is accidental or deliberate, contamination is never acceptable and can often be avoided if good hygiene rules are in place and adhered to every time. In this second unit, we will look at cross-contamination. When harmful germs, known as bacteria, is transferred from one area to another, this is called cross-contamination. It is usually when a raw food item is moved from a contaminated area to an area that should be safe. A vehicle of contamination is used to describe anything that helps bacteria move from one place to another. For example, chopping boards, utensils, human hands and animals. Common causes of cross-contamination are leaving food uncovered, using the same utensils, chopping boards and surfaces for raw and ready-to-eat food, handling raw food then ready-to-eat food without washing hands or equipment, and storing raw and ready-to-eat food together. Cross-contamination can be prevented by removing debris, clutter and unnecessary equipment from food preparation surfaces. Worktops should be washed before and after cooking. Using separate utensils and chopping boards, often colour-coded as previously mentioned, for each type of raw and ready-to-eat food item will also greatly reduce the risk of cross-contamination. In this third unit, we will look at control measures. As we have already identified earlier and understood in legislation around food safety, it is by law that all food establishments have food safety control measures in place. Food safety management systems by law must be recorded and kept up to date, put in place permanently and reviewed in accordance with any changes to procedures or products. These procedures are ideally based on the internationally recognised food safety system known as HACCP, Hazard Analysis and Critical Control Points, which you will remember from the training section. This system is well evidenced in ensuring all areas of food production are safer and is designed to guarantee food businesses can identify and manage any hazards and risks that can occur in the preparation of food. A hazard is anything that has the potential to cause harm. We have previously looked at contamination, where a food safety hazard can be microbial, i.e. bacteria, physical, i.e. presence of unwanted items, chemical, i.e. cleaning products, allergenic, i.e. traces spread by utensils or cloths. A risk is the probability that a person will be harmed or experience an adverse health effect if exposed to a hazard. For example, a high risk would be undercooked chicken being served at a barbecue event. It is likely to make a lot of guests ill with salmonella poisoning, whereas finding a caterpillar in your prepared salad, although unpleasant to the eye and stomach, it is unlikely to cause a person any real harm and would be considered low risk. Control measures are precautions that are taken to reduce the chance of a hazard occurring, reducing it to an acceptable level of risk. These measures could include ensuring food is covered to prevent physical and microbial contamination, ensuring the temperature of the fridges are correct for storage of the food, or training staff on cleaning routines. As we have observed in the HACCP training earlier, a critical control point, CCP, is a step or procedure at which controls can be applied and a food safety hazard can be prevented, eliminated or reduced to an acceptable level to protect food. Everyone working in a food establishment needs to be aware of the food safety management system that is in place. This greatly assists all members of a team to understand their role and responsibilities in eliminating risks to the customer from food-related hazards. Following a food safety management system greatly gives confidence to the management that staff are able to adhere to the regulations and procedures set by the law. The regulations help to identify steps are carried out to ensure food safety at all times. There are many advantages to following a food safety management system, including providing clear records that show actions taken to prevent hazards occurring, identifying potential hazards early before damage has occurred, highlighting unsafe processes that need to be controlled or changed, provides greater confidence in ensuring safety in food production, provides new productions to be made safe at the initial stages, provides the team with a common approach and understood by all staff. Welcome to Section 5, Contents. In this fifth section, we are looking at temperature management systems. We will cover the following units. Unit 1, Recommended Safe Temperatures and Refrigeration and Freezers. Unit 2, Cooling and Thawing. Unit 3, Hot and cold holding. Unit 4, Cooking and reheating food. Unit 5, the importance of measuring and recording temperatures. And Unit 6, displaying of food. Please remember, to move to the next unit you must press save and continue. To go over and watch the video again, press play. You can take the test as many times as you need to in order to pass the test. We are looking at recommended safe temperatures and refrigeration and freezers. It is recommended that you always keep cold food cold, below 5 degrees Celsius, and you always keep hot food hot, above 63 degrees Celsius. In order to stop harmful bacteria growing to dangerous levels, it is imperative that food handlers keep high-risk food out of the danger zone. The more time the food spends in the danger zone, the higher the risks are. It is extremely important that particular attention is given to ensure the time and temperature controls are maintained throughout the made-to-service process. Food handlers must be aware of the situations where food can be in the danger zone, causing potential food hazards. Minimising the time between preparing and serving food is key to reducing food safety risks. General Guide to Safe Temperatures. It is important to note that food companies may differ from place to place. Therefore, it is good practice to familiarise yourself with the rules of your workplace and follow their rules. Minus 18 degrees Celsius or below, frozen deliveries and deep freezing. Frozen deliveries above minus 15 degrees Celsius should be rejected. 0 to 5 degrees Celsius, refrigerated deliveries, refrigerating, cold holding, cold stores and chill display. Deliveries above 8 degrees Celsius should be rejected. 63 degrees Celsius or above, hot holding, temperatures should be checked regularly. 75 degrees Celsius or 70 degrees Celsius for 2 minutes is for cooking and reheating. In Scotland, a minimum core temperature of 82 degrees Celsius when reheating. Refrigeration. Temperature must be below 5 degrees Celsius, checked regularly and recorded. Bacteria will grow at a very slow rate on food items stored below 5 degrees Celsius, therefore reducing the risk of high levels of contamination. Hot food must not be placed in the refrigerator as it will raise the temperature, putting other food at risk and could cause cross-contamination. In an ideal world, raw and cooked food should be stored in separate refrigerators. If this is not possible, then raw food must always be placed below cooked food. You must defrost and clean refrigerators regularly, disinfect door handles every day, place raw food below cooked food. You must ensure food is labelled and dated to allow for stock rotation. You must not overload the refrigerator. You must not put hot food in the refrigerator. You must not store metal tin cans in the refrigerator. And you must never place raw foods above cooked foods. Food must be placed in sealable containers to prevent contamination and tainting. You must check stock regularly and follow the FIFO rule, first in, first out. Freezers. Temperatures must be minus 18 degrees Celsius or below, checked regularly and recorded. Freezers need to be placed in cool, well-ventilated areas away from direct sunlight and other heat sources such as cookers. Freezers are not designed to kill bacteria that go into a dormant state in frozen food. Therefore, food safety rules must be applied and followed. You must regularly defrost and clean freezers to ensure they operate efficiently and to avoid the build-up of any food remains. You must ensure food is labelled, dated and packed well, excluding air to maintain quality. And follow the FIFO rule, first in, first out. You must not leave the freezer door open. You must not place hot food in the freezer. And you must not store metal tin cans in the freezer. In this second unit, we are looking at cooling and thawing. Cooling food. Cooked food that is to be stored cold must be cooled as quickly as possible to prevent any surviving bacteria or spores from growing to harmful levels. It is recommended that food is cooled for up to 90 minutes and then put into refrigeration. If it is not possible for food to be cooled within 2 hours, for example a large joint of meat can take a lot longer to cool, advice must be sought from the Department of Environmental Health regarding safe cooling procedures. You must cool food as quickly as possible, ideally within 2 hours. You must cover cooling food to protect from contamination. You must never place hot food in a refrigerator. To help food cool quickly, you can consider using a blast chiller, ice bath or cool running water. You can split food into smaller portions, use shallow trays for liquids, or use a cooling rack or trivet. Thawing food. Thawing food can present a variety of problems from cross-contamination to undercooking. The liquid that drains off raw meat can contain high levels of bacteria which can contaminate ready-to-eat food if not treated carefully. Excess liquid must be discarded carefully, making sure any surfaces that it has come into contact with are cleaned and disinfected thoroughly. It is important to be aware of cross-contamination. Thaw small pieces of raw food in a container at the bottom of the refrigerator. If thawing poultry, check joints are flexible. Thaw large pieces in a cool room, maximum 15 degrees Celsius, in a covered container. Make sure food is defrosted all the way through and there are no ice crystals. Thaw meat on a rack or trivet so thawing liquid runs away from the meat. If using a microwave, make sure food is defrosted all the way through. Thawing can be done using clean, cold water. Once food is thawed, defrosted food must be treated as chilled food. Use defrosted food within 24 hours and never refreeze a food item unless it has been cooked first. In this third unit, we are looking at hot and cold holding. A bain-marie or a heated cabinet can be used when there is a requirement for high-risk food to be kept hot prior to serving. These pieces of equipment can be used to keep the food out of the danger zone. It is extremely important that the cooking and reheating temperatures are reached before hot holding can be started. Food must be kept at 63 degrees or above. Food must be stirred to prevent cold spots forming. If the temperature drops below 63 degrees Celsius, food must be served within 2 hours and then discarded. A chiller cabinet or cold storeroom can be used when there is a requirement for a high-risk food to be kept cold. These pieces of equipment are used to keep the food out of the danger zone. The temperature must be kept at 8 degrees Celsius or below. A food item must not be kept past its specified shelf life. And if food is out for service, i.e. buffets, self-service, etc., must not be out for longer than 4 hours. In this fourth unit, we are looking at cooking and reheating food. Cooking food thoroughly ensures that most bacteria are destroyed. Some industrial cooking processes involve high temperatures over 120 degrees Celsius to make sure bacteria and spores have been destroyed. Manufacturers' guidelines must be followed if a microwave oven is to be used. Recommended power levels and times should be treated only as a guide. A physical check of the core temperature must be taken. Food cooked in a microwave may be stirred partway through cooking to avoid cold spots forming, and recommended standing times should be followed after cooking. It is important to note food must be cooked to a minimum core temperature of 75 degrees Celsius for 30 seconds or 70 degrees Celsius for 2 minutes. In Scotland, there is a legal requirement to ensure the temperature is at least 82 degrees Celsius when reheating food. Never reheat food more than once, and turn large items to ensure even cooking. You must thoroughly cook eggs, poultry, pork and mincemeat products. Stir liquids regularly to avoid cold spots forming. Cut food into smaller portions to achieve core temperatures more quickly. In this 5th unit, we are looking at the importance of measuring and recording temperatures. Temperature measuring equipment. There are a variety of devices for the measuring of temperatures for use within food establishments, including handheld and inbuilt thermometers. The devices must be checked regularly according to the manufacturer's instructions to ensure they are working correctly. Probe thermometers. You can measure the temperature of food accurately using a probe thermometer. It can be inserted into the centre of the food to enable the recording of the temperature. The temperature must be taken in the thickest part of the food. Probes must be cleaned and disinfected appropriately to avoid cross-contamination. It is important that food handlers ensure that their probes are working correctly. This can be done by placing the probe in boiling water to check it displays 100 degrees Celsius and then place it into crushed ice to check it displays 0 degrees Celsius. A reading of 1 degree Celsius higher or lower is acceptable on either check. Recording of temperatures. Food handlers should follow the individual food establishment's rules on how often temperatures should be measured. Food handlers who are given the responsibility to record temperatures should be given training on how to take temperatures using equipment that is accessible to them, recognise and deal with unsafe readings, and keep records of temperatures taken and any actions made as a result of the readings. In this 6th unit, we are looking at the displaying of foods. Displaying of food items. Food items kept for hot or cold display for food service must be kept at the correct temperature. You will remember 63 degrees Celsius for hot food and below 5 degrees Celsius for cold food. Temperatures must be monitored regularly throughout the day. As previously observed in food safety control, keeping records of the temperature checks can form part of a food safety management system. It may help a food establishment's due diligence defence if records are needed to be checked. Display units should be protected by guards to prevent contamination from sneezing and coughing, etc. Cleaned and sanitised after each service time period. Replenished regularly with small quantities, avoiding excess time on display. And the display counter must never be overloaded. Buffet food. Food should be placed on display Welcome to Section 6, Contents. In this 6th section, we are looking at food poisoning and bacteriology. We will cover the following units. Unit 1, High and Low Risk Foods. Unit 2, Food Poisoning and Foodborne Diseases. Unit 3, Types of Bacteria. Unit 4, Bacteriology and Spoilage. Unit 5, Preservation of Food. And Unit 6, Facts Surrounding Food Poisoning and Prevention. Please remember, to move to the next unit you must press Save and Continue. To go over and watch the video again, press Play. You can take the test as many times as you need to in order to pass the test. In this first unit, we are looking at high and low risk foods. High risk foods. Ready-to-eat food items that require no further cooking are considered high-risk food. If the food is contaminated with bacteria, it can multiply and would not be killed through the cooking process before the food is eaten. Foods that are eaten raw, for example oysters, sushi, etc., should be treated as high risk. Particular care should be taken when dealing with high-risk food. Correct storage to avoid cross-contamination is high priority. Strict time and temperature controls should be adhered to avoid the risk of food poisoning. High-risk food items should never be stored next to raw food. Cooked rice, pasta and cereals, although not high in protein, are classed as high-risk food as they can provide a moist environment where certain bacteria can multiply to dangerous levels at room temperature. Some examples of high-risk food: cold cooked rice and pasta, cooked meat and poultry, for example cold chicken and ham, and products containing cooked meat, for example meat pies and pâté, dairy produce, for example milk, custard and cream cakes, egg products, for example fresh mayonnaise and quiches, food eaten raw, for example sushi, and shellfish, for example cooked prawns. Low-risk foods. Low-risk food items do not encourage the growth of harmful bacteria and are unlikely to cause food poisoning. They are more than likely to have a best before date rather than a use by date and do not need to be stored in the refrigerator. Some examples of low-risk food. Low-risk foods often have a high sugar or salt content, for example chocolate and crisps, or foods that are highly acidic, for example pickled gherkins and vinegar. Food items that are dried or contain a small amount of moisture are considered low risk, for example breakfast cereals and flour. In this second unit, we are looking at food poisoning and foodborne diseases. Food poisoning. Bacteria requires warmth, moisture, food and time to grow. These 4 elements contribute to food poisoning. A link in these elements must be broken to protect food. Warmth. The majority of bacteria grows rapidly at body temperature, 37 degrees Celsius, but can grow between 5 degrees Celsius and 63 degrees Celsius, known as the danger zone. Moisture. All bacteria requires moisture. The majority of foods have enough for bacteria to develop. Food. Pathogenic bacteria can grow well in high-protein foods, for example poultry, meat and eggs. Time. All bacteria grows by dividing in 2. This process is known as the binary fission. Symptoms of food poisoning. Food poisoning usually occurs soon after food has been consumed. The symptoms of food poisoning may include one or more of the following: vomiting, diarrhea, nausea, abdominal stomach pain and fever. High-risk groups. High-risk or vulnerable groups may not be able to fight off food poisoning in the same way others can. Those at risk are elderly, the very young, pregnant women, people who may be ill, and those who have a reduced immune system. Toxins. The key to controlling toxins is to ensure bacteria doesn't grow, and temperature control is the most useful method to achieve this. Some food poisoning bacteria causes illness by fighting our body's defence systems. Other bacteria produces toxins that cause illness in a different way. There are two particular types of pathogen toxins, infection and intoxication. The first type, infection, is caused by the swallowing and absorption of food containing active bacteria, which grows and forms itself in the human intestinal tract. The second type, intoxication, is caused by consuming food that already contains toxins created by bacteria, which has grown within the food item. On the following slides, we will be looking closely at the group of diseases that are caused by bacteria, viruses and parasites. There are more than 250 known foodborne diseases, of which some enter the body through contaminated food and water being consumed and going through our gastrointestinal tract. They all have longer onset times than food poisoning bacteria, and very few are needed to cause illness to high-risk groups, as we saw earlier. The onset times can differ in length depending on the strain of the bacteria, the age of the person and their general overall health. Most people with foodborne diseases get better on their own, providing they replace lost fluids to prevent dehydration. Campylobacter, often found in raw chicken and raw meats, untreated milk, animals and birds, contaminated water. The onset time is usually 2 to 5 days. The symptoms are diarrhea, abdominal pain, nausea and headaches. The precautions is to thoroughly cook food, keep raw food and cooked food separate, wash hands, only drink pasteurised milk and keep animals away from food. E. coli 0157, often found in raw and undercooked meat and poultry, particularly minced beef, untreated dairy products and contact with farm animals. The onset time is usually 3 to 4 days. The symptoms are diarrhea, can be bloody, abdominal pains, can lead to serious kidney damage. And the precautions are ensure thoroughly cooked food, take more care with burgers and sausages and keep raw and cooked food separate. Shigellosis, often found in water and food contaminated with human faeces, eating food that has had contact with contaminated water. The onset time is usually 1 to 7 days. The symptoms are diarrhea, can be bloody, abdominal pain, and precautions are thoroughly wash hands, keep toilet areas thoroughly clean, wash fruit and vegetables well in clean water, and avoid sharing of hand towels. Hepatitis A, often found in shellfish contaminated with sewage, food contaminated with human faeces and contaminated water. The onset time is usually between 2 to 6 weeks. The symptoms are nausea and vomiting, tiredness and loss of appetite, abdominal pains and fever, and the precautions are as above. Listeria, often found in unpasteurised dairy products such as soft cheeses, brie and camembert, meat pâtés, soil and contaminated water. The onset time is usually 3 to 70 days. The symptoms are fever, diarrhea, can cause septicemia in high-risk groups and can cause miscarriage and other complications in pregnancy. Precautions: pregnant women should avoid foods that have a high listeria risk and always follow use-by dates. Neurovirus, often referred to as the winter vomiting bug, often found in infected food handlers, contaminated water, and it is airborne. It is to be noted that the neurovirus is highly infectious. The onset time is usually 12 to 48 hours. The symptoms are vomiting, diarrhea, fever, and abdominal pain. The precautions are: wash hands, keep toilet areas thoroughly clean, and avoid sharing of hand towels. In this third unit, we are looking at types of bacteria. Bacteria is by far the most widespread cause of food poisoning. Campylobacter is the largest, most common offender of significant food poisoning cases in the UK, with Salmonella being the second most common cause. Let's look at types of bacteria. Salmonella, often found in raw meat, poultry, eggs and untreated milk, guts of animals, people, rodents and domestic pets and sewage. The time of onset is usually 12 to 36 hours. The symptoms are vomiting, abdominal pains, diarrhea and fever. The precautions are keep raw food and cooked food separate, keep food at correct temperatures, wash hands, cook eggs thoroughly and keep animals away from food. Staphylococcus aureus, often found in untreated milk and in humans through the mouth, nose and skin. The time of onset is usually 1 to 7 hours. Symptoms are vomiting, abdominal pain, diarrhea. Precautions are don't cough, sneeze or spit over food, wash hands, cover cuts and generally keep yourself clean. Clostridium perfringens, spore forming, often found in raw meat, vegetables, dust and soil, insects and human and animal waste. Time of onset usually 12 to 18 hours. The symptoms are abdominal pains and diarrhea. Precautions: wash hands, wash vegetables, cook and cool food correctly and keep raw and cooked food separate. Bacillus cereus, often found in pasta, rice and cereals, dust and soil. The time of onset is usually 1 to 5 hours. The symptoms are vomiting, abdominal pains and diarrhea. Precautions: keep yourself clean, cook and cool food correctly, serve cooked rice as soon as possible or cool rice and refrigerate as soon as possible. Clostridium botulinum, often found in vegetables, fish and meat, soil and hazelnut puree. Time of onset is usually 12 to 36 hours. Symptoms are vomiting, abdominal pains, diarrhea, difficulty in breathing and swallowing, blurred vision, paralysis and in some cases death. Precautions are wash vegetables, cook and preserve foods correctly and avoid using damaged food cans. As you will have now learnt, all types of bacteria must be avoided by thoroughly following all precautions necessary. In this fourth unit, we're looking at bacteriology and spoilage. Bacteriology is the study of small living things. These living things are generally too small to be seen without the use of a microscope. They are known as microorganisms or microbes. They are found in the soil, in water and in the air. The human body is also home to millions of microbes. Some microbes make us ill and some are important to the health of our bodies. Many diseases of animals, including humans and plants, are caused by bacteria, viruses and fungi. Some bacteria are used by pharmaceutical companies to produce important medicine, for example antibiotics. The harmful bacteria that attacks our bodies and cause food poisoning are known as pathogens. However, infection with a pathogen does not necessarily lead to disease. It is important to note that not all bacteria are harmful. Certain bacteria are important and are used in food production to make food like cheese and yogurt. Yeasts and fungi are important to the production of food and drink, for example wine, beer and bread. Disease materialises when the cells in your body are damaged as a result of infection and signs and symptoms of an illness start to show. Spoilage bacteria are the microorganisms that cause food to break down and deteriorate. Binary fission. Binary fission is where bacteria is able to divide in two every 10 to 20 minutes. In order to do this, a cell must first grow to twice its size before splitting in two. One singular form of bacteria may become over 1 million in just 3.5 hours. Spores. Spores are also microscopic and you would require a microscope to see them. The majority of spores are a single cell that is protected by a hardy cell wall that helps it to prevent the bacteria from being broken down. You will recall that in order for bacteria to multiply, it requires warmth, moisture, food and time. Serving food immediately after cooking or storing food correctly will help to minimise the risk of spores occurring. If a spore has survived the cooking process, it may be able to multiply again as the food cools down. Spores can usually be eliminated with the use of high temperatures and pressure. Therefore, some foods will require cooking at extremely high temperatures to destroy the toxin-producing bacteria. However, not all bacteria can be destroyed. Therefore, we must ensure that we are able to reduce them to an acceptable safe level and extra care is taken with food even after cooking. Spores are resistant to heat and freezing, which means there is no guarantee that food is safe when brought to room temperature or when cooked. It is important to remember that although cooking may kill all microbes in food, they wouldn't have got rid of any toxins they have already produced. Spoilage. Food that is unfit for human consumption is regarded as food spoilage. It is identified by having an unusual taste, sour smells, mould, bulging cans, leaking packages, discoloration, stickiness or slime, production of gas, and strange textures. In this fifth unit, we are looking at the preservation of food. Food preservation techniques are used to prevent the growth of bacteria in food and drink, ensuring they are fit for consumption for longer periods of time. Certain methods will be able to eliminate all traces of microorganisms. However, other methods will only be able to reduce the amount of bacteria, making them safe to eat for a short period of time. Once preserved food items are unsealed, the majority will need to be treated like fresh food, therefore will require protecting from the risk of contamination. Refrigeration and freezing are two traditional methods of preserving food. We will take a closer look at the alternative methods used to preserve food now. Methods that are commonly used are pickling, is the method of foods placed in acidic liquids that do not allow for the growth of bacteria. Salt acts as a preservative by drawing water out of food, dehydrating it, preventing moisture being available for bacteria to grow. Dehydration is the removal of moisture from the foods. Sterilisation is a method of heating food to high temperatures, heated up to 110 Celsius to 135 degrees Celsius for about 15 to 20 minutes, hot enough to kill most bacteria and prolongs the shelf life of the food. Pasteurisation is the process of heating food, usually liquids such as milk and eggs used to produce cheese, to a specific temperature for a period of time and then cooling immediately. This process slows down spoilage caused by microbial growth in the food. UHT, ultra heat treatment, is where the food is heated to extreme temperatures for short periods of time. For example, milk is heated to not less than 132 degrees Celsius to ensure spores are destroyed and allows it to last longer, though once opened it needs to be treated as fresh. Canning is the process where heat is used to destroy any microorganisms that can cause food spoilage and high enough heat to eliminate heat-resistant spores. The food is then safe to be stored at room temperature whilst the can is airtight. Vacuum and MAP, modified atmosphere packing, are methods of storing and presenting food without air to hinder the growth of bacteria. Sugar, much like salt, is an effective preservative that prevents the growth of bacteria. Last but certainly not least, smoking is one of the oldest methods of preserving food, arising from the development of cooking with fire. Smoking techniques involve hanging food, most commonly meat or fish, on racks in chambers containing wood smoke for prolonged periods of time. It adds flavour to the food in addition to preserving it. In this 6th unit, we are looking at the facts surrounding food poisoning and prevention. Facts surrounding food. In the UK, we throw away 7 million tonnes of food and drink from our homes every year, the majority of which could have been eaten. Food waste is a global issue, not just in the UK. Businesses are required to reduce food waste and see what else can be done to help reduce it. WRAP, Waste and Resources Action Programme, Welcome to Section 7, Contents. In this 7th section, we will look at the control of organisms, otherwise known as pests. we will cover the following units. Unit 1, Common Types of Pests. Unit 2, Prevention of Pests. And Unit 3, Pets. Please remember, to move to the next unit you must press save and continue. To go over and watch the video again, press play. You can take the test as many times as you need to in order to pass the test. In this first unit, we are looking at common types of pests. A food pest is an insect or animal that lives on or in human food. Pests can contaminate food with bacteria and diseases. They can also cause physical contamination with droppings, urine, fur, feathers and even dead bodies. Food establishments can provide the ideal conditions for pests as they offer food, warmth, shelter and water. It is extremely important to make sure premises are properly maintained to avoid any pest infestations. Mice and rats. They live in sewers or in nests around buildings and can multiply rapidly. The signs of them are droppings, gnaw marks, greasy marks on pipes and woodwork, damage to wiring, damage to products or packaging, smell of urine, sightings of live or dead mice or rats. In order to safeguard, you should remove all waste as soon as possible, fit bins with tight fitted lids, clean bin areas, repair taps, pipework and external vents, clear all food spills, rotate stock and report sightings to supervisor to contact pest control. Flies. They land on animal faeces and rotting food, collecting bacteria on the hairs of their bodies. They can cause cross-contamination from food to food. The signs of them are housefly eggs, maggots, live or dead flies. In order to safeguard, should put up fly screens, mesh on doors and windows or food rooms, ultraviolet fly killers, sticky fly papers in storerooms, cover all food, position bins away from windows and doors, cover bins with tight fitted lids, and empty and clean and disinfect bins regularly. Cockroaches. They like warm and dirty places. They are nocturnal. Eggs can take approximately 2 months to hatch. Each egg case may carry between 10 and 30 eggs depending on the species. Signs of them are live or dead cockroaches, unusual smell, damage to products or packaging. In order to safeguard, keep all rooms clean, clean up all spills, store foods in sealed containers, keep rubbish and waste areas clean. Particular attention is needed after an outbreak as eggs can hatch at a later date and regular inspections are required. Ants, often attracted by unprotected food. Signs of them are live or dead ants. In order to safeguard, cover all food, clear up any food spills immediately, report sightings to a supervisor so that the nest can be dealt with. Birds. Birds carry many pathogenic bacteria and can cause damage. Signs of them are visual sightings, droppings, feathers and damage to food. In order to safeguard, protect windows and doors to property. Mist nets may be put up in warehouses to catch and remove birds. Reject damaged food deliveries due to the risk of contamination. And birds are not to be fed near food handling areas. Dry store product pests, such as weevils. Weevils may be found in flour and other dry goods. They are normally quite harmless in the egg stage and enter the food during food growth. Signs of them are visual sightings and damage to food. In order to safeguard, use food within the use by or best before date, store in sealable containers in cool, dry storage areas. Do not buy food in quantities larger than necessary to be used in a reasonable time. And remember the stock control rule, FIFO, first in, first out. In this second unit, we are looking at the prevention of pests. Prevention is always better than cure. A potential pest problem must not be ignored. It is important to understand that food premises can be and have been closed down as a consequence of inadequate pest control. Must. Storage areas must be easy to clean and allow easy access to check for signs of pests. Rubbish areas must be kept clean and waste should be kept in tight-fitting, lidded bins. You must ensure goods are used within the appropriate date to help prevent problems with pests. Repairs must be made as soon as possible to damaged drain covers, door bases and any other areas that will allow pests into the building. You must always check deliveries of goods for signs of infestation and refuse delivery if you suspect the food is contaminated or containing pests. Food should always be stored correctly in pest-proof containers and off the floor. Food should never be stored outside as this attracts pests. Waste areas should be cleared regularly as rubbish provides the correct environment for pests. Fit inset screens on windows and doors that open directly into food preparation areas. External water sources such as taps and drain pipes should be properly maintained to avoid any damaged or dripping taps attracting pests. Remember, pest problems can result in loss of revenue through damaged stock, gaining a bad reputation and in some cases legal action against the food establishment. It should be part of any food establishment's routine to check for signs of pest infestation. If evidence is found, it must be reported to a supervisor so that necessary action can be taken. All products damaged by pests must be removed and destroyed. In this third unit, we are looking at pets. By law, food establishments are responsible to ensure their own food safety management procedures identify and control risks in food safety. For example, having adequate procedures in place to prevent domestic animals from having access to places where food is prepared. The legislation relating to dogs in food premises, Regulation EC 852/2004, states that adequate procedures are to be in place to control pests. Adequate procedures are also to be in place to prevent domestic animals from having access to places where food is prepared, handled or stored. Under EU regulations applied throughout the UK, including implemented in the Food Hygiene Scotland regulations, the presence of dogs are not prohibited in catering establishments such as pubs, restaurants and takeaways. The decision is at the discretion of the owner of each individual premises. However, they are expected to follow food safety measures to maintain food safety at all times. Under the Disability and Discrimination Act 1995, Article 22 on premises, food establishments are to be mindful in terms of permitting dogs in food premises and advise that guide, assistance dogs are considered highly trained working dogs, not pets. Pets can be a variety of animals including dogs, cats, livestock, example chickens, which provide fresh eggs. Domestic pets must never be allowed into food handling or preparation areas. They carry bacteria in their fur, feathers, skin, saliva and intestines. Food handlers must not stroke or fuss the dog, cats or other pets on the premises as they will contaminate the food they are preparing. If they do, they must wash their hands thoroughly using correct procedures. Welcome to Section 8, Contents. In this 8th section, we're looking at safe storage and transportation of food. We will cover the following units. Unit 1, the importance of stock rotation and use by and best before dates. Unit 2, the control of dry stores and the importance of labelling. And Unit 3, the delivery of food. Please remember, to move to the next unit, you must press save and continue. To go over and watch the video again, press play. You can take the test as many times as you need to in order to pass the test. In this first unit, we are looking at the importance of stock rotation and the importance of use by and best before dates.
It is important that when food is stored, you should follow the FIFO rule, first in, first out. The oldest food items should be used first. Use by and best before dates need to be checked regularly and with each new delivery that arrives. Newly received stock should be placed to the back of the store to help encourage FIFO, first in, first out. The date the stock was received and the use-by date should be recorded on the stock to make it easily identifiable. When a food delivery arrives and is sorted, frozen food must go in the freezer first, followed by refrigeration foods and dry store products last. Temperatures must be maintained when storing food. The expiration date must be identified. Items with the earliest expiration date must be stored in front of items with later dates and use the item stored in front first. Use by and best before dates. Record production date and use by dates on food that is prepared and will not be served immediately. Food items labelled with the best before date ensures that the food is at its best quality if stored correctly or served by this date. It is a criminal offence to serve or sell food past their use by and best before dates. Any food items past these dates must be discarded or clearly marked unfit for human consumption. Discarding food that is past the expiration date is also important in preventing foodborne illness. In this second unit, we are looking at the control of dry stores and the importance of labelling. The control of dry stores. The majority of dried foods are non-perishable, although they may lose the flavour and appearance over time. It is essential that dried goods are not allowed to become moist, as this will allow the growth of bacteria. It is important to note that dry food storage areas must be clean, cool and dry. Dry food storage areas must be well lit and ventilated. Regular, thorough stock rotation takes place to ensure no old stock is left behind and observations of any pests is evident immediately. Food should be stored off the floor to allow for regular cleaning. Large open shelving units allow for air circulation and observations of any spillages due to potential pest infestations. Food packages have date information to inform us of how long food can be stored before it is unsafe for consumption or before the quality of the food begins to deteriorate. It is important to remember the best before date will only be accurate if the food is stored in accordance with the instructions on the label. For example, store in a cool, dry place or keep in the fridge once opened. It is also important to remember that use-by dates no longer apply when the food item is opened. For example, pre-packaged foods such as cooked meats and salads, when opened, the food label will advise that the product should be consumed within a specific number of days, usually 2 to 3 days, before being discarded. You will remember from the food allergens unit, food allergies and intolerances are life-changing. In the UK, they affect around 8% of children and 2% of adults. Businesses are required by law to provide allergen information either in writing or verbally on 14 specific allergens. This rule means that you can ask about information relating to the 14 allergens and you will see it emphasised in bold, italic or colours on packaging. You will have noticed looking at the foods you eat that manufacturers use phrases such as may contain or made in a factory that handles. It is currently not a legal requirement to state on the label that there could be traces of an allergen. However, companies are choosing to forewarn customers of the risk. You will find more information on www.food.gov.uk. In this third unit, we are looking at the delivery of foods. The delivery of food. Food delivery should only be purchased from reputable food suppliers. As we learnt earlier in the legislation around food safety unit, due diligence ensures that particular attention is taken when food is purchased and delivered. It is good practice to have a checklist that can be used to record the overall conditions and details of the delivery. It is vital for the following to be checked when the food is delivered. The food is identifiable and marked clearly. Ensure the packaging is not damaged in any way. Ensure food items are well within their date. Ensure the food is of high quality standard. Ensure no evidence of any damage by pests. The delivery vehicle must not be used for the transport of non-food items where it may arise in contamination. Ensure the delivery vehicle is clean and weatherproof. Ensure the vehicle is free from pests. Ensure the vehicle is not overloaded. And separation of products is clearly evident. It is extremely important that refrigerated and frozen foods are at the correct temperatures and checked regularly. Refrigerated food deliveries must be 0 to 5 degrees Celsius. Frozen food deliveries must be -18 Celsius or below. Hot food deliveries must be 63 degrees Celsius or above. Refrigerated food deliveries must be rejected if above 8 degrees Celsius. Frozen food deliveries must be rejected if above -15 degrees Celsius. It is extremely important that if collecting from suppliers, the time between buying chilled or frozen foods should be limited as short as possible. Cooler bags or boxes should be used to transfer the food and placed into freezers and refrigerators as quickly as possible. Last but certainly not least, food should be rejected if you are not happy with the quality of the food and returned to the supplier.